Most people will never save $20,000. That isn't a harsh judgment, it is a statistical reality. In our current economy, the vast majority of households are living paycheck to paycheck, burning through nearly everything they earn just to keep up with the rising costs of housing, groceries, and energy. If you look at the averages, they can be misleading because a small group at the top pulls the numbers up while millions of others sit with almost nothing in reserve. If you haven't hit that $20,000 milestone yet, you are technically normal. But being normal in this context means being one emergency away from a crisis. What nobody tells you is that once you actually cross that $20,000 line, a fundamental shift occurs. It isn't just a change in your bank balance, it is a complete rewiring of your brain, your decision-making process, and the speed at which your wealth begins to accumulate. To understand why this number is the ultimate tipping point, we have to look at the psychological and mechanical traps that keep people stuck in the survival zone. Before you reach $5,000 in savings, you are likely operating in survival mode. In this state, every dollar that enters your account already has a job before it even lands. It's spoken for by rent, electricity, insurance, or car payments. This creates a constant state of mental math and financial shuffling. Research in behavioral economics shows that this kind of financial scarcity actually reduces your cognitive bandwidth. You don't make poor decisions because of a lack of intelligence, you make them because your mind is overloaded with short-term problems. When you are drowning in this week's bills, you physically cannot think long-term. When you have less than $5,000 in savings, every tiny financial decision feels like a potential crisis. Should you repair the car now or risk driving it another month? Should you buy the healthier groceries or the cheapest options to save $20? These micro decisions drain your mental energy, leaving you exhausted and unable to focus on bigger opportunities like career growth or investing. This is the scarcity trap. $20,000 is the magic number because of what it removes from your life. It removes the fear. When you have that amount sitting in a high-yield account, you finally have a buffer between you and disaster. If a major appliance dies, you handle it. If you lose your job, you have 3 to 6 months of breathing room to find a new one without panicking. That breathing room changes everything. When you aren't stressed about survival, you sleep better. When you sleep better, you perform better at work. When you perform better, you earn more. This creates a positive feedback loop that touches your health, your relationships, and your future. Beyond the psychology, $20,000 is the point where the mechanics of money, specifically compound interest, becomes visible. Below this threshold, interest is almost invisible. If you have $2,000 earning 5%, you get $100 a year. It feels insignificant. But at $20,000, that same rate gives you $1,000 a year in pure interest. Suddenly, your money is generating a noticeable return without you lifting a finger. Your money is starting to do the heavy lifting while you provide the same amount of effort. Crossing this threshold also serves as a massive psychological proof of concept. By saving $20,000, you have proven to yourself that you can delay gratification, say no to things that don't serve your goals, and build something from nothing. You stop seeing yourself as someone who is bad with money and start seeing yourself as a wealth builder. This shift in identity changes how you spend. When you have nothing, you often buy things to feel better because your financial situation makes you feel terrible. But once you have a solid foundation, you stop buying things to impress people you don't even like. Your spending becomes intentional, and intentionality is the primary divider between those who stay broke and those who become wealthy. In practical terms, this amount of capital unlocks doors that were previously locked. First, it opens the world of real investing. You are no longer limited to a basic savings account. You can begin looking at index funds or diversified ETFs that historically deliver much higher returns than a bank account. Your money stops just keeping up with inflation and starts actually growing. Second, it gives you immense negotiating power. When you aren't desperate for your next paycheck, you carry yourself differently. You can negotiate harder for a salary increase or even walk away from a toxic work environment because you're not shackled by immediate financial need. Opportunities begin to appear not because the world has changed, but because you have. Employers, partners, and even banks sense your stability. Third, it finally breaks the earn-spend loop. Most people are stuck in a cycle where money comes in and immediately goes out in a fortnightly rhythm. $20,000 creates a gap between your earnings and your lifestyle. Once that gap is established, it tends to grow wider over time because you've already mastered the habits required to keep it there. So, how do you bridge the gap if you're starting at zero? It requires 3 specific actions. First, you must be brutally honest about where your money is leaking. Most people can find hundreds of dollars in hidden spending once they track every cent for 30 days. Second, you must automate the process. Set up your transfers so that the money moves on payday before you even have the chance to spend it. If you wait until the end of the month to save what's left, there will never be anything left. Third, you must focus on increasing the gap by either cutting costs or, more importantly, increasing your income. Every extra dollar you earn should be funneled into that savings goal until the threshold is met. The hardest part of this entire journey is the stretch between $0 and $20,000. This is the trench, where it feels like nothing is working, progress is agonizingly slow, and the sacrifices don't seem worth it. But they are. Every single deposit is compressing the timeline and bringing you closer to the point where the momentum takes over. The math is patient, and the math works. You just have to stay in the game long enough to let it do its thing. Once you cross that line, you will realize that you haven't just saved a sum of money, you have purchased your own freedom.